The night Ada decided to confront the billionaire fruit seller, the whole town of Ogundil seemed to hold its breath. At the edge of the quiet town stood a giant white mansion, its windows dark and still, watching the road like silent eyes. In front of the tall black gate, Ada stood alone, heart pounding, staring at the house where the strange fruit seller returned every evening. Somewhere in her spirit, she knew that whatever lived behind those walls was tied to the suffering of the town. But this was not where the story began. Ogundil had always been a town of belief. The people said that destiny was written by God and guarded by ancestors. A person's path might bend and twist, but it was never meant to be stolen. Life, though hard, was simple and steady, until the Harmattan morning when a stranger arrived. He came pushing a wooden wheelbarrow filled with oranges. His name was Kola. The Harmattan wind blew dry and dusty, but his oranges looked fresh and perfect. They were too perfect. Smooth skins with no blemish, bright color that almost glowed, and a sweet smell that cut through the dry air like honey. People stopped to look. A man who dressed so neatly, with the calmness of someone used to wealth, seemed out of place behind a wheelbarrow. "Sweet oranges," he called out gently. "Take one, change your day." The first person to buy from him was Mama Saad, a woman known all over Ogundil for her strong health and good fortune. She walked up to the barrow, eyes shining at the sight of the fruit. "My son, your fruit looks like blessing," she said with a smile. Kola smiled back, slow and polite, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. "Everything from me brings change," he replied. That evening, Mama Saad was in her kitchen, humming as she cooked. Without warning, she gasped, clutched at her chest, and collapsed. By the time people rushed in, her strength had disappeared as if someone had drained it from her bones. She did not die, but she never walked again. The town sighed and shook their heads, blaming sickness, age, or fate. No one thought about the orange she had eaten. Days passed. One afternoon, Ibrahim, the brightest student in the local school, bought an orange from Kola. His teachers always said he would leave Ogundil one day and make the town proud. That night, he ate the fruit happily. The next morning, he opened his books and stared at them in confusion. The letters danced before his eyes. Words he used to read easily now made no sense. His bright mind had gone blank like a wiped slate, and no one could explain why. Then it was Bode, the mechanic. His workshop was always busy, full of customers and laughter. He, too, bought oranges, 2 of them, from Kola, laughing as he paid. Within a week, a strange fire broke out in his workshop. In a few hours, everything burned. Cars, tools, and the savings he had poured into the place. His business, his pride, and his future turned to black ash on the ground. One by one, the lives of people in Ogundil began to fall apart. Health vanished. Success turned to failure. Minds that once shone with intelligence grew dull. Yet no one, not even once, looked at Kola's oranges and thought, "This is the cause." Why would they? He was calm, polite, respectful. Every evening, he quietly pushed his wheelbarrow back to the giant white mansion at the end of town, locked his gate, and disappeared inside. The adults in Ogundil blamed bad luck or the anger of unseen forces. But the children saw more than adults did. They whispered about Kola. They said his shadow sometimes moved before his feet. They said he talked to empty air when he thought no one was watching. They said, late at night, his oranges glowed softly under the cloth that covered his wheelbarrow. One night, a small boy named Segan decided to see for himself. When the town was quiet and the moon was high, he crept out to where Kola always left his wheelbarrow covered by the mango tree. Segan lifted the cloth with shaking hands and reached for one of the perfect oranges. The moment his fingers touched the fruit, a burning pain shot through his palm as if he had grabbed a hot coal. He screamed and fell to the ground. By morning, Segan woke up in his mother's arms, his eyes wide and frightened. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. His voice was gone. The doctors could not explain it. The only mark on his body was the faint, strange burn on his palm. Fear settled over Ogundil like a heavy cloud. People began to avoid the fruit seller. Yet every day, Kola still pushed his wheelbarrow along the dusty street, his face calm, his clothes neat. And every night, he still returned to the big white mansion that had appeared with him, as if the house itself had followed him from another world. Then Ada arrived. She came from the city, tired of its noise and chaos, seeking a slower life where she could build something of her own. Ada was bold, smart, and full of dreams. She did not fear charms, gossip, or village tales. In her mind, problems had practical causes and practical solutions. She believed in effort, not in curses. She rented a small room, unpacked her few belongings, and planned a fresh start in Ogundil. But her path had already been tied to Kola's long before her feet touched the town's dusty ground. One market day, Ada was walking through the busy stalls, observing people and studying how the town lived. That was when she saw him. Kola, sitting under a mango tree, his wheelbarrow beside him, full of those same bright oranges. The fruit shone under the sun as if it had its own light. But unlike in the early days, people did not crowd around him. They walked in wide circles, whispering to one another and refusing to meet his eyes. Ada stopped. She watched him, curious. Something about the scene felt strange. It was not just the oranges. It was the man. The way he sat so calmly while everyone avoided him. The way the air around him seemed heavy. For a moment, it felt to Ada as if she had seen him somewhere before, in a dream she could not fully remember. Kola lifted his head slowly and their eyes met. The noise of the market faded in her ears. The wind seemed to pause. Ada's heart beat faster, though she did not understand why. "You've been searching for something," he said softly. Ada blinked. She had not spoken a word. "How did you?" she began. Kola picked up an orange and held it out to her. Up close, it looked impossibly perfect. "Take one orange," he told her. "It will show you what you seek." Ada felt her spirit tremble. Something deep inside her whispered a clear warning. Run. But another part of her felt drawn to him, as though she was standing in a moment that had been waiting for her since before she was born. "I don't want an orange," she said quietly. Kola tilted his head. "Whether you take it or not," he replied, "your path and mine are already tied." Ada turned and walked away quickly, doing her best not to look back. Even so, she felt his eyes on her until she disappeared into the crowd. That night, Ada could not sleep. When she finally drifted off, a dream took hold of her. She saw herself standing in a dark forest. In front of her rose a huge tree, tall and twisted, its roots glowing faintly beneath the earth like hidden fire. Beneath the tree stood Kola, but he was not fully human. His skin glowed from within, like embers buried under ash. In his hand, he held one of his oranges, but in the dream it pulsed like a living heart. He lifted the fruit to his mouth and whispered to it as though the orange could hear and answer him. Then, slowly, he raised his head and looked at Ada. His eyes burned like hot coal. Ada jerked awake with a shout, her nightclothes damp with sweat, her chest tight, her heart racing. The images of the tree and of Kola's burning eyes refused to fade. She knew in her bones that this was not an ordinary dream. It was a warning. But danger had not just arrived in Ogundil. Danger had been living there for months, wearing a calm smile and pushing a wheelbarrow of oranges. Ada knew she needed answers. Rumors and fear were no longer enough. Someone had to know who Kola really was and what his fruits truly did. The next morning, she went to see Mama Ikit. The old woman's compound sat at the edge of town, filled with hanging herbs, clay pots, and the smell of roots drying in the sun. People said Mama Ikit remembered stories from before independence, and that her eyes had seen more than most. As Ada stepped into the compound, the old woman looked up sharply. "You have fire on your head," Mama Ikit said, her voice trembling. Ada stopped. "What do you mean?" "You looked at him." "He looked at you," the old woman replied. "Your spirits touched. It is dangerous when the wrong eyes meet." Ada sat down on a low stool and leaned forward. "Mama, I need to understand," she said. "Who is he?" What is happening to this town? For a long moment, Mama Ikit said nothing. Her eyes seemed to stare past Ada, into memories that lived behind the present. Then she sighed deeply and motioned Ada closer. His name is not Kola, she whispered. That is the name he chose when he returned. Returned? Ada asked. From where? From a curse? The old woman said quietly. From a bloodline that has been paying a price for more than 100 years. And there, in her small herb-filled compound, she told Ada the story of Aladil. Long ago, in a nearby kingdom, Aladil was a very wealthy man. He had land, gold, servants, and more than any man needed. But it was not enough. His heart was greedy. During a sacred festival, when the people danced for the ancestors, Aladil slipped away into a forbidden grove where a mysterious tree stood, the Tree of Essence. The elders said that tree held the destinies of men like ripe fruit. Aladil did not listen. He reached out and plucked one of the fruits. That night, the spirits of the land descended like a storm. They cursed him and his descendants. From that day forward, every firstborn son in his family would be born under a terrible condition. To survive, he would have to steal destinies through fruit. Any person who ate the fruit he offered would lose their God-given path. Their life would fall apart, while the cursed child absorbed their destiny and grew stronger. When Mama Ikit finished speaking, Ada's heart was beating fast. So Kola, she whispered, he is one of them? Mama Ikit nodded slowly. He is the latest child of that bloodline. His wealth is not normal wealth. It is built from the lives he has swallowed. Every success he has ever enjoyed came from someone else's stolen future. The old woman held Ada's hand and looked into her eyes. You must stay away from him, she warned. Your destiny shines brighter than most. People like you attract cursed spirits. If he cannot steal from you, he may try to bind you. No one has ever stopped them. You can only run. But Ada was not someone who ran. People in Ogundil were losing their destinies, and now she knew exactly who was behind it. She could not pretend she didn't know. She left Mama Ikit's compound with her mind made up, fear in her chest but determination in her steps. That evening, as the sky turned the same orange shade as Kola's fruit, Ada walked to the white mansion at the edge of town. The road was unusually quiet. She stopped in front of the tall black gate and stared at it, her heart thumping. The gate was too high to climb, and the walls too smooth to hold. Soon, she heard the squeak of a wheel. Kola turned the corner, pushing his wheelbarrow calmly as always. His white shirt was spotless, his wristwatch expensive, his face composed. He moved like a man who owned everything around him. When he saw Ada standing at his gate, he stopped. You should not be here, he said quietly. I know who you are, Ada replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. Oh? He asked, raising an eyebrow. And what am I? A thief of destinies, she said. A cursed child. The air around them seemed to grow heavier. Even the breeze slowed. So, Kola said softly, you spoke to the old woman. I expected you to. Why are you doing this to people? Ada demanded. Why destroy their lives? He looked up at the sky for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Do you think I enjoy stealing destinies? He asked. This curse was placed on my family long before I was born. Without absorbing destinies, I would die within days. Every stolen destiny extends my life. You still choose your victims, Ada replied. You decide who loses everything. That is more than survival. Kola's eyes darkened. You speak like someone who has never been desperate to survive, he said. Then his gaze softened, and he looked at her with renewed interest. But you are different. Your destiny shines brighter than any I have ever seen. It calls to me. Ada stepped back. Stay away from me, she warned. Kola walked toward the gate. As he approached, it swung open on its own, with no one touching it, as if the house itself obeyed his presence. He pushed the wheelbarrow into the compound. If I take your destiny, Ada, he said, looking back at her, I will never need another for the rest of my life. But I do not want to harm you. I want to understand why your destiny touches mine. He stood just inside the gate as it began to close. "Come tomorrow," he said quietly. "You deserve to know the full truth." The gate shut between them. Ada was left alone in the growing darkness, her heart torn. If she walked away now, Ogundil would continue to bleed destinies for years. If she returned tomorrow, she might lose her own destiny forever. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and turned away from the mansion, her footsteps slow but steady. Ada was not born to run. She would return. She would step into the mansion of stolen destinies. And whatever truth waited inside, she would face it. Because some destinies are not meant to be stolen. They are meant to fight back.